The first step in making cedar tea is to make sure that we get some of the dirt that has accumulated on the cedar leaves themselves. So what we're going to do is put them into a plastic bag like this, right? And we're just going to give that bag a few shakes like that, just to get the dirt that is accumulated on the cedar leaves off and into the bottom of the plastic bag. So what we're going to do is we take the cedar leaves out of the plastic bag like so, lay them on our cutting board, prepare them for step 2, and the dirt that's left in the bag will stay there, and we have leaves that are ready to be prepped and pruned and trimmed for step 2. Okay, the next step is what we want to do to make our cedar tea is to chop the cedar leaves that we have into smaller chunks, so that when we do boil the tea, it's a little easier to make the cedar tea. So you don't want to have it too fine. You just want to kind of slice through them with a knife so that the cedar leaves are in smaller bits, just so it's a little easier to boil when you make your cedar tea. Here we go, just about done. Okay, let's see. Now we're going to make 1 cup of cedar tea. So we need roughly 1 cup of cedar leaves. Right, just pack that down a bit, and that makes roughly, well, there's 1 cup of cedar leaves here, exactly what we need for our cedar tea. Let's move on to the next step, which is to make the actual cedar tea. So the next step when we want to make our cedar tea is to get the water and the leaves ready to boil on the stove. So what we're going to do is we measured out about 2.5 cups of water here. Add that to a pot, and here is our cedar leaves, 1 cup of packed in cedar leaves, and we add that to the pot, and it's ready to boil. Now you got to remember, when the water starts to boil, water evaporates as it boils. So roughly 2.5 cups will boil down to probably about close to just over a cup of tea, give or take, depending on how hot the stove gets and how much water evaporates. But roughly 2.5 cups, 1 cup of packed cedar should yield 1 cup of cedar tea. All right, so let's move on to the next step, which is to actually boil the cedar tea. Okay. So the next step to make cedar tea is we are going to boil the water with the leaves in it. So what I usually do is I usually set it to a pretty high temperature just to get it boiling. And that's at medium-high heat right now. So this will probably take probably between 5 and 10 minutes for the water to start boiling. And once it boils, what I'll do is to reduce that heat to medium and allow the cedar to actually simmer. It's going to take probably about 10 to 15 minutes for the cedar tea to actually start to brew, and the color of the water will start to turn kind of golden brownish color. And when that happens, you know the cedar tea is almost complete. So let's let the water boil here for a bit, and then we'll get back to lowering the temperature and allowing our cedar tea to simmer. So the water now is starting to boil. It's been about 7 minutes, so the water's starting to boil with the cedar in it. So what we want to do now is we want to give this a little stir just to break up the cedar a bit and to start releasing some of the fantastic medicines that are within the cedar itself. You're going to notice that your kitchen is starting to smell very pleasant, and that's the cedar starting to release certain compounds that will allow the medicines to be released, as well as a very pleasant smell in your kitchen. So what we're going to do now is we're going to, now that the water's boiling, we're going to reduce the heat to low to medium to allow the cedar to simmer. Now this will probably take another 5 to 10 minutes or until the water starts turning to a golden brown color. As you can see now, it's not quite there yet. They're still relatively clear. So what we want to do is simmer the tea long enough for the water to turn golden brown. And that'll probably take about another 5 to 10 minutes, depending on a variety of factors, but generally that will be the time frame. So the cedar tea has been simmering now for the past 15 minutes or so, and you can really smell the cedar in the kitchen. It really gives off this really pleasant smell, and it releases this compound that really helps to improve the air quality, especially for those of you who have any bronchial issues or breathing issues. This compound that's released into the air really helps to improve those conditions, which is one of the benefits of drinking and using cedar tea to help with those types of conditions. As you can see here now, the cedar tea has taken on a different color. It is turning more brownish, golden brownish color now. So it's just about ready now to be strained and to be we can use this to drink our cedar tea. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use a strainer. I just use a simple strainer like this. Any type of spaghetti strainer or a sieve will do the job perfectly. And you're also going to need a pot. Not a pot, but well, I guess a pot like this. It's a medium-sized pot that we can use to put the strainer on top of. So what we're going to do is strain out the cedar leaves, and the tea will drip to the bottom of the pan. So we're just about ready to do that now. So let's just give this one last stir, just to make sure everything's out, in terms of the cedar tea out of the leaves. And we're just going to slowly pour this into the strainer. Now you want to make sure that you don't put your hands too close to the steam, because steam is hot. It may burn your hands, so you don't want that. So you're just going to make sure all the cedar is out and the tea. Put that aside. Turn off your stove, of course, right? And what we're going to do is we're just going to mix this around, make sure that we get all the goodness of the cedar tea into the other pot, so we can drink that. Okay, so everything looks good. All right, so we'll just let that sit for a few seconds to make sure everything drips down into the pot, and then we'll get it ready to get the cedar tea ready to consume. So now that we have strained our cedar tea into this pot, we're now ready to pour it into a cup and get it ready for consumption. As you can see, we have our cedar tea here. So we're just going to get a teacup here, and we're just going to pour that into the cup. Now, I'm not going to pour all of the contents into the cup because there is a bit of sediment at the bottom of this, and I don't want too much sediment in my cup of cedar tea. As you can see here, the color is nice golden brown, and that's exactly the color that you want for your cedar tea. Now, what I usually do is I add either a half a tablespoon of 100% pure maple syrup or half a tablespoon of honey. But it's up to your preference. But of course, for those of you who are on sugar-free or low carbohydrate nutrition protocols, you can use a substance called stevia. And stevia is a naturally occurring substance that's used as a natural sweetener that contains zero sugar. And of course, that's totally up to you and what your nutrition protocol calls for. But in this case, I prefer maple syrup. So we're just going to add roughly half a tablespoon of maple syrup. As you can see here, we're going to add that to the tea. And then we're just going to give that a stir, just to mix it up. That looks good. Now you're going to notice a bit of sediment in the tea itself as you give it the final stir. That's fine. Just give it a few seconds and allow the sediment to sink to the bottom of your teacup. So here it is. This is the finished product. This is the cedar tea that you will be drinking. Now the great thing about cedar tea is the magical benefits, the great health benefits of drinking cedar tea. Now cedar tea is made up, like the major healing compounds in cedar tea are three compounds. They're cedrine, cedrol, and thujopsine. Now these three compounds give cedar tea its healing properties, and that really fabulous fragrance that's released once we boil up the tea, and it really helps improve your mood, helps improve the household's mood, just because of the fragrance and the smell that's released as we make the tea. It's quite relaxing, and it's used in a lot of shower gels, shampoos, and stuff like that, just because the smell is very pleasant. And also cedar helps with a lot of ailments. It's really a magical substance. When you think about it, it helps with respiratory issues. It helps with skin issues. It helps fortify the body's immune system. Very important at this day and age. It helps with hair. It helps improve your mood. It's a very holistic medicine. And if you do have 1 to 2 cups a day, I'm certain it'll keep the doctor away, as the old saying goes, right? But there it is, the fantastic healing properties of cedar in a tea. So that's exactly how you want it to look. So I want to thank you for joining me today, and enjoy your cup of cedar tea.